good Wednesday morning, right? It is Wednesday. It feels like it should be Friday or something. But it's Wednesday. So.
I thought it was on Monday.
Monday?
I wish it was Friday.
Friday sounds better. Anyway, we're going to get started with social studies this morning, so whatever you're working on can get put away. And I need you to get out the Arctic American Indians and the Plains American Indians worksheet. That was yesterday's assignment. There were two sides to that. I have here the first one we'll look at, the Plains Indians. A couple of things before we get started. We're going over the Native American groups again because we talked about them way back in probably October. Okay, and with iLearn coming up, it's something we need to review. We typically see information about the Native Americans on there, so I want it to kind of be fresh in your mind and remembering the different groups we talked about. So we'll see a couple of these papers here over the next few days as we progress closer to iLearn, okay? That's why you have it. But I want to go over it with you. That way you have the right information. And then it's something you can look back and review before we take that social studies test, okay? Those of you at home learning, I know this week and over the next 4 weeks, you are taking the iLearn already. We haven't started here at school. But if you're here during the day taking iLearn, don't think you have to go home and hurry up and get all of this work done. Just let me know it's going to be a little late. You were taking iLearn, and I'll give you some extra time on that, okay? So keep that in mind. Don't rush to hurry up and get it done. You can always go back and watch these videos later. I leave them posted for at least a week, all right? But that's why we're going over this. That's why we're doing the states things. We'll get to those here in a few minutes. Tomorrow, those of us here at school, Mrs. Bush's class and in my class, will go down to the gym. We're going to do a practice iLearn. So I'm going to do a live Zoom at 9:05. We're going to do some review test questions, okay? And then we're going to take all of the states that we've done so far. All of those worksheets are going to go down with you. They need to be done because we're going to do a little activity with all those worksheets. So if they aren't done, that's something that you should look at maybe getting finished up today and making sure you have them all. I have 3 new states for you today: Hawaii, New York, and Maine. None of them have a bunch necessarily. Some of them have a lot. Like Minnesota, I think, had a bunch of stuff to label, didn't it? Yep. These states here don't have quite as much as Minnesota did. That's why we're doing 3 of them. Okay, so make sure you have those ready to go. You're not submitting them because we're using all of them tomorrow for an activity. Okay? Today, right now, we're going to go over these worksheets. So the Plains American Indians, where do you think they were located? Without looking it up, where could you guess that those Native American groups were located? Sean?
Kind of like in the middle of the country.
Yeah, right here.
Nevada, Iowa.
Right, because what do we know about this area?
Flat.
It's flat, and they call it the Plains, right? The Great Plains. We read about the Great Plains. So it would make sense that those Native American groups were kind of in this middle section.
Yeah,
And you may have found a picture, so here's kind of what I shaded, and it's, again, just kind of a general in the middle, the best you could. As long as you know the Plains Native American groups are going to be in that Great Plains area, okay? In that middle of the country.
Yeah.
That's where they were going to be located,
Indiana.
okay? Part 2 wants you to describe the Plains American or Native American tribes. What'd you come up with? So that's down here, part 2. What are some things you mentioned about them? Adam? Hunted buffalo. All right. Claire?
They were the first nation to be government.
The first what? Okay, first government. I didn't hear the definition, the words before. What kind of government? Oh, plantation government, right? So what's a plantation? Let's talk about that word, because that's a good word to know. Maya?
It's like a giant farm.
Right, big farm, right? We talked about those giant farms early on as well. So big, large farms. And who did they have to, or what did plantation owners need to make those farms, those large farms, successful? You wanna? Yeah, they had to have slaves, didn't they, to keep that land working. And we know from reading in the book that the owners themselves didn't do a lot of the work, right? They had other people that kind of managed and took care of different aspects of those plantations, but they had a lot of slaves, okay? Some even Native Americans that were working for them to keep those plantations successful. If it wasn't for them and all their hard work, those plantations wouldn't have been successful, okay? Anything else? For part 2 that you wrote down. John?
They have 30 different tribes.
30 different tribes, so a big group, right? Lots of different groups, all right. Go ahead, John, you got another one?
Yeah, each tribe has their own religious beliefs and their own.
Okay. Own language, religious beliefs. I need you filling this in, filling on these good review study papers, please. Wyatt, you working on these papers? This is what we're doing right now. This is important stuff. Fill it in. If you left one blank or you weren't sure where to write in there, write it down. Okay, we just got a bunch of good explanations and information from others. Okay, that's why we're sharing. Nick, what do you have?
They live in teepees
Okay, they lived in the teepees. So why did they live in teepees?
because
Go ahead, Nick.
they were like easy to transport and like you could break them down and set them back up really easily.
Right. We just heard Adam mention that they hunted buffalo. So buffalo move, don't they? Okay, they move around, they graze, so they had to pack everything up and move with them and follow them. Okay, so that's part of the reason that they use teepees. And in part 5 on the back, you did a little exploring of those. But let's go here to part 3. You had to draw a picture that represents the Plains American Indian. So you may, if you would like to share it, you may post a picture of on the updates. But let's go to part 4.
What does that mean?
So I'm over here. So you're just drawing a picture of them, finding one and drawing a picture. Maybe tell us what tribe they were from. Okay. Part 4, number 1. What did the Plains American Indians live in? We just talked about that. Brendan? Teepees, letter C. Number 2, what did the Northwest Indians usually eat? Claire? Buffalo. We talked about that too. And number 3, what was a common custom of the Northwest Indians? Ooh, that was a tricky one because I had to kind of look up each individual thing. And you might recognize letter A, the potlatch, because that was in our book. I realize that I don't have those particular chapters open for you at this point, but it might have been a word that kind of, you're like, huh, I remember reading that or seeing it. Okay, so a potlatch would be the answer here. It was a tradition where they would celebrate and bring food together, kind of a giving feast.
Yeah.
Okay, some of those other ones, if you look them up individually, you might have been like, I don't think that's necessarily a tradition or a custom. It was something they might have done, but not something they would necessarily continue to do today or be common among different groups. Okay, so letter A for number 3, potlatch. And that's where they would bring food, kind of have a big feast. Okay, Nick, question?
Is that what custom means, like a tradition?
Yeah, a custom means a tradition. So you might, something you're accustomed to doing. Okay, and
Like
you
a
might do it.
holiday?
Yeah, even holidays, you have customs or traditions. Yeah, similar kind of interchangeable words there. All right. Then on the TPs, we kind of talked about those already. You might have written a sentence, given a definition for those. Questions on Plains American Indians. I'm going to scroll down here to this one. I think we did pretty good finding information. You guys had some good things to share there. Let's look at our Arctic American groups here. Where on this map, without looking it up, knowing what Arctic means, where would they be located? Josh?
Like at this top part of here?
Yeah, all the way up here is exactly right. Why would they be up here? Why does that make sense? Remember, you're drawing a conclusion. You're making an inference. You know what Arctic means. You know they're a group of people, so they would live up here. Why, Sean?
It's cold up there.
It's cold up there, right? We know it's cold up here.
And they
So
like
yeah.
cold.
And that's where they tend to live, right? That's where they're accustomed to living, and they've adapted to that environment. So here you can see, I think Josh pretty much had the same. His was just colored red. Up here in this general area, all of that top area should be shaded in for our Arctic Native American groups. Okay? Good. Part 2. Let's describe them. Sean, what do you have?
Well, the one that I read said that some of them were like in Canada a little.
Okay, and they could be. Yeah, some of that. They could be there in Canada. Some of that is parts of Canada. We just didn't color too far down. I noticed more like the way northern portions. Okay, on some of those. What else? Hunter? Polar bears? They might have, right? What else would they do with the polar bears, though? Besides just for food, what would they do? Go ahead, Hunter.
Like clothing
exactly. They would use that fur, right? And make sure that to help keep them warm because the polar bear's fur is very warm. Okay, so food, clothing. Okay, they'd use the skins or the furs. Well, the skins and the furs. What else, Nick?
They use. I'm trying to think what polar bear has. I was gonna say something about the buffalo, about
Okay.
how they like same thing, and then they use like its horns.
The horns?
For, like,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was either silverware or cups.
Okay. They could, yeah, they would make utensils out of them, and I'm sure they might carve them in some way in the cups if they could. Sure. You wanna? They lived in igloos? Yep. Sean?
They also hunted muskox and those reindeer-like things. But
The caribou? Is that what you're thinking? The caribou?
And
Mm-hmm.
then whales, and they use that.
Oh,
for
yeah.
whale stuff, and
Good, we talked about the whales, didn't we, when we were reading about them, how they would use the different things for oil and whatnot. Good. Juliana?
They would fish.
They would fish, yeah. They're right up here at the top, right? So they have access to the ocean for the whales and other fish. All right, so we're here on part 2. Part 3 is again the picture. So if you drew one and you want to share that, post it on updates. Let's go to part 4. How did the Inuit, again, that should be something that sounds familiar to you. You may not necessarily remember specifics, but it should be somewhat familiar. Make their homes for winter. How did they make them? Well, we know they had igloos, so what did they have to make them out of, John? Yeah, they had to make them out of ice, letter A. Teepees wouldn't work, right? Too thin. Okay? Wouldn't. Yeah, they wouldn't keep them warm, and it wouldn't probably hold up against winter, I would think, snow either.
Yeah, because it would be really windy.
Yeah. Number 2, what did the Inuit use for clothing? Ooh, we just talked about that. Riker?
Animal skins and furs.
Yep, animal skins and furs. And again, it makes sense because these are going to be warmer than some of these other things, right? And cotton shirts probably didn't exist. Okay? So think about those. Number 3, why didn't the Inuit farm? Again, making inferences, drawing conclusions. You don't necessarily have to have text in front of you or to look things up to know why they wouldn't be farming. Claire? It was too cold. Absolutely. Okay? So a lot of these you may not have even had to look up. Okay? Thinking about what you know, what you don't know. And then I think the last part is the igloo, right? We said it was made out of ice. You might have said it was the home that the Arctic Native American groups used made out of ice. Okay, you might have drawn a picture. The rounded, right? We normally see them rounded with the little tunnel to go in. All right. Hunter, question, comment?
Wouldn't they be able to farm ice to build more structures?
I see what you're saying by farming, like harvesting, right? I would think so. I would think they could find it and kind of get it where they can use it as their igloos.
They could get big
Makes me
sticks.
think of the movie Frozen, the first one where it opens up with them cutting the ice and singing.
Let it go.
They don't sing Let It Go. Yeah, they're in the very, very beginning and they're harvesting the ice, right? Okay, to sell. They're not using it for igloos, but they're harvesting it. Josh?
I have a very serious question.
Okay.
So, when they make the igloos and they go in, how do they block the thing that lets them enter?
That is a very good question. I don't know the answer to that.
They
Might use
they
more
could-
ice. What else could they use?
They could use the skin from.
Oh, that's what I'm thinking. The skin from an animal and just hang it like a
I
curtain.
have another question.
Sure,
So they would have to sleep with all their warm clothes on,
probably.
which would be very uncomfortable.
It could be. It could be uncomfortable, but you'd be warm, so you might be comfortable.
And then with their blankets, would they use like wool and stuff? Probably.
If they had it available, I'm sure they're gonna use the animal furs though to lay on. That would be their blanket and their clothing, and that was probably a big resource for them. Okay, Maya?
If it was so cold, wouldn't like the ice be very firm? So
I would
if
think
they got
so.
a ladder, they could go to the top with the
They could. They could just use the igloo if it was cold enough as the ladder, couldn't they?
Yeah.
All right. All right, good. We had some good thoughts, good discussions, made some good inferences on those two Native American groups. Like I said, we'll see a few more here eventually, but today's assignment, are just adding, since it's late start Wednesday and makes us a little bit shorter on time, adding those 3 states. So the worksheets are available to you on Schoology. You're not submitting them, but I do want to point out, let me grab one that's maybe not so tiny. Hawaii's got little tiny islands. Let's look at New York. Some of you are not labeling. So here it says word bank. You're supposed to label on the map those items. It tells you the directions. Learn about the state of New York. Label the map with the cities and landforms listed in the word bank. Then color the neighboring states with the colors listed below. Okay, so you're labeling these, writing them on this map wherever they're located. Okay, there's a few of you that just submit it with the states colored. And then I respond to you. You've got to label them. Okay, so make sure you're labeling them, and then you have those ready to go for tomorrow's activity. Okay?
Okay.
Questions on social studies? We're good? Just the states today. If you did not finish the states quiz yesterday, I know Schoology was down. Go ahead and finish that. Get that done today. I put it in already as a 0, but I'll go back and give you full credit. Okay? Because it's not your fault Schoology was down. Reading is just a flow cab. Cause and effect. I know the students here in my room haven't completed it yet, but I noticed several of you in Mrs. Bush's room did get it done yesterday. So I would encourage you to check for late work. Make sure you've got all these states worksheets done. And there was something else I needed to tell you. I can't remember. Make sure the state's quiz is done. You may not have gotten to that with Schoology being down. Okay? Oh, extra credit for social studies. You can work on that as well.
When's that?
All right? May 3rd, that's due. So are your book reports, at least 2. All right? So getting those items done for today.